Haven't made a video in a while, sorry if I'm a little rusty. Hey Planet Earth, Untamed Druid again, coming at you with video 16, and I know that there's a discrepancy, there's not a video 14 up right now, because I thought that video was too extreme, but because I put video 15 on my last video without there being a 14, I'm probably just going to put out that forbidden video and see if I get banned over it, or if people continue to not watch anything, in which case it doesn't really matter. But so this video is called Dispelling illusion, sorry, and basically it kind of goes parallel with the how to know what you should know video, except that's more of a practical kind of how to know what subject to focus on, and this is more how to tell if what is being communicated to you by someone else is a genuine statement, regardless of the entanglements of scientific empiricism and things like that, which literally strip a non-scientific individual of their ability to know anything, because they don't have the ability to prove things empirically, because that's something that is only, I guess, possible through scientific methods, which generally implies that if you're not a scientist, you can't prove anything. So if you're not a scientist, you can't know anything. And that's just a basic form of illusion, which is like, well, of course you would like to think that I can't know anything because that gives you all the power, but, if I don't just go along with that, there's got to be, that has to make sense, kind of, because to just defer all my power to you because you say so doesn't really hold much water. Yeah, so dispelling illusion. The Sanskrit word for illusion is Maya, and Maya means the world or sea of illusion, and this is used by the Brahmins of India, and I mean there's probably other sects in India that use similar language. It's just a study of basic Sanskrit information. I really like the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Upanishads, and then the Vedas, of course. But yeah, and coming at this from a Catholic Christian perspective, I guess I wouldn't technically be Catholic and Christian, but I like to throw those out there to show people that you can stay within your lane but still appreciate philosophies and ideas from different parts of the world. But you still have to have the key is being able to dispel the illusion, because even in many Eastern traditions, what's happened at this point is that the illusion has been infused into their own theologies. So they're preaching, dispelling illusion while indoctrinating themselves into a different type of illusion. And because they're talking about dispelling it, there's very little resistance to it, because it doesn't seem, it doesn't, because it's being encouraged, it doesn't seem like it's illusion. But that's what we're going to get to. Yeah. So if Maya is the world or sea of illusion, we as Westerners might, be like, what does that mean? What's that supposed to mean? And I would say that the Brahmins are simply abstracting, so they're just using language to talk about a concept indirectly by relating to something that is sensually perceptible. So if we see a sea of illusion, it's like an entire vastness of open space filled with just falsity, and it's just something so your senses can grasp onto what they're talking about. Yeah, they're simply abstracting the falseness of a life that is not lived in truth. So truth is, again, by the Brahmins, defined as any auto-generated statement which acknowledges the role slash presence of Krishna. And Krishna, for Catholicism and Western theology would be just replaced with Christ. So, and they kind of sound similar, so it's pretty easy to make the connection in your mind. So basically, any truth is anything that you develop yourself that puts Krishna, Jesus. See, the problem with, it just puts the holy perfection at the middle of everything and as the cause of everything. So when we talk about Krishna and we talk about Jesus, they have connotations in our minds to immediately be like actual people. And there's nothing really to assert that has to be that way. It's not even that I don't believe that a physical Jesus existed, because I kind of do. But it's more of a what Jesus represents. Like he's besides just being an actual physical person, he's a representative of characteristics and qualities. And those characteristics and qualities are at the essence of what Jesus is. So, besides just being a person, Jesus is also all of the conglomerate of all of these perfect aspects of being a human. So, so acknowledging that there is a correct way to live. There's a correct way to basically do everything. There's a correct way and then there's a wrong way. And the idea of illusion is that people are practicing the wrong way to do things, and they have no idea that that's happening because they're being indoctrinated into systems that tell them to, interact in that way and do the things that they're doing. So, yeah. So the process of infusing outer world understanding, so like the physical world that we see around us, infusing our outer world understanding with this kind of Hindu understanding of truth is the original process that we call science. So corroborating all facts on the grounds of a single universal truth is the original process of science. So, you just put this perfection at the middle and the beginning of everything that causes everything that we experience to exist. It all comes from this exact same principle of perfection and basically auto-generation. And that's why auto-generation is so important when you're talking about dispelling illusion, because the illusion, again, is just you accepting what other people have told you to be true, and then that's it. So yeah. So if original science, like the original process of coming up with understanding of the outside world, if that existed as a purely theological phenomenon, so it existed in tandem with religious understanding. So being able to perform and understand science was an extension of religion. So essentially science only works and is provable when you put God at the middle of it and say that it came from God, because everything else assumes randomness and nothingness and lack of pattern, essentially, which is, fundamentally humans are pattern recognition machines. So the assumption of a lack of pattern is false based on how humans work. So it's just at a fundamental level, it's false, and it's just a trick, because there's nothing really telling you that what I'm telling you. So, they can just get away with lying to you because you can't really justify challenging these super high authority figures because they're super high authority figures, and of course they know more than you because they're the super high authority figure, and that's just the way it works. So you just do exactly what they say, and that's the point. You're not supposed to do what someone else says. You're supposed to do what you're meant to do here. So yeah, so if science was originally a purely theological phenomenon, we can see that illusion is the end result of scientific study which does not corroborate its findings to the one essential truth. Another word for this is nescience. So you'll see that lots in the different Eastern books. They'll reference nescience, and that just means a lack of science. So N-E and then science, nay science, with no science. So science gets its validity from aligning with the one thing that we can know is true, because this is what the Brahmins went through, the process of understanding the world around them, and then specifically the Brahmins went inside because they were the religious sect of India. So they, instead of looking outside for answers, they looked inside, and what they found is that there's a single truth that underlies all of manifestation, and that the only way to corroborate any statement at all is to relay all statements through that single one truth that can be proven. And so that's the operation and basic understanding of science, and that does not happen now because we've rejected that God exists. So all of the science that we're practicing now does not exist, or does not acknowledge how existence exists. And because there's no contemplation of that, it's just assumed that you can't know it, and that it's ridiculous to even think about it or speculate about it. And because there is no understanding of why we exist at all, it just divorces the information that comes out of science, or Western science. It divorces it from being an accurate description of the world around us, and forces it to be an accurate description of an interpretation of the world around us. So now the Western mindset might find some of this hard to relate to, because of our fast-paced and auto-repressive culture, having little room for religious thought, conversation, or even worse, comparative religious thought. People don't, like super religious people think it's blasphemy to, compare religions. So it's hard to maintain your religiosity and then also be interested in other cultures. That's kind of like chastised a little bit. So it might be difficult because I'm referencing Eastern works, but one second, my little cat. Religious thought, comparative thought. Even though the process of God-infused science is how Western man developed Europe and America, that was the basis of all thought, because Christianity was, just like Hinduism for a bit, as far as practicing science in this way and really forcing everyone to go through God. But instead of God being a philosophical principle like it was in India, and then India still had priests and stuff and the Brahmins, and so you still had to go through the hierarchy there, and that's part of, they're talking about this illusion, but then they're participating in it. So it's like the East is, they're kind of, double-edged sword, but the God-based science is how we built some of the greatest buildings in the world. The like the Notre Dame Cathedral and like all of these, even, even African buildings and, whatever, like when the Muslims moved in, they were fantastic builders, right? Into North Africa and stuff. And like, and even not the Muslims, even like just genuine, ritualistic, native Africans, the original knowledge that native peoples had, or that in a theological sense, theological knowledge allowed for the huge expanse of humans that we currently experience. So, we're basically saying you guys are wrong because it's inconvenient to think of God, because then we have to adjust our power structures based on that. And, like that's what's going on. And, we're just really in a whirlpool of that right now. If truth is auto-generated, God-centered thought, and illusion is information that comes from outside of yourself and is not God-centered, we see that the issue of illusion hangs on our understanding of God, if we have one at all. Instead of preaching about God and what God means to me, I'll let you have your own relationship. So yeah, I'm Catholic, Christian, I really enjoy Indian writings and stuff. I'm basically open to any interpretation of God that doesn't require me to be subservient to an institution. It's the institutionalization that delegitimizes, because it's like, if God exists, you don't need an institution. God doesn't exist only if everybody gets together and worship. It's like that. So anyway, yeah, it's really more, basically all these videos are more, what's important to me is that you, whoever you are, wherever you are, just engage yourself. You don't even really need to listen to me. And it's kind of pretentious in my mind for me to come on here and like say things like this, because it kind of seems like I'm a preacher and I'm preaching illusion. So like, I really want to emphasize the concept of you taking your knowledge and understanding the world as you see it, and really purifying what you know to be true, and not relying on me. Like, if what I'm saying makes sense, if it doesn't, like, just stay the course, understand the world how you understand it. Don't be afraid to be wrong, but don't assume that you're wrong. Assume that you're correct, but be willing to be wrong. It allows you to be centered. But then, oh yeah, I don't know everything. I'm just a person. So, but you have to believe in yourself. And that's the basic, how do you dispel illusion? Well, the illusion is people not believing in themselves because they don't know anything, because everything's seemingly just hearsay from the higher authority, who knows where they get their information. Who knows if they're telling you the truth, or if what they're telling you just conveniently gets everybody to be scared and huddle together, or separate and never see their family members again. So yeah. So how do we dispel illusion? Man, I do that so much. I have like dyslexia of speaking. But we review what we know, the sources of that knowledge, and whether or not the purveyor of said information themselves benefit, or a group they're an extension of benefit, by claiming a godless model of the universe. So really, what it comes down to is you're looking for, does this person believe in God? And it's not really, your understanding of God doesn't need to match that person's. It's just, if they're trying to explain the world without including God, they're just not talking about the beginning of anything. They're just talking about the physical occurrences that are going on right now, which is, a science in itself, but without acknowledging why we're here in the first place. Im- there's an implementation of bias in that, because it's just like not acknowledging how we got to being where we are in America, not acknowledging the past, just being like, we're here in America right now, and what would be the best if we just did communism, and it's like, that makes sense on paper if you don't look at any history, if you don't take anything into account, it's just like, yeah, just looking around, of course we need to help more people, of course we need to, fix the police system, and of course we need to do all these things that make our society a better place, but if you don't include history, if you don't include like what led us to now, if you don't include the source in anything that you say, it just like it implements this utility bias where they're trying to get you to believe that this is the worst that the world's ever been, because they benefit from you thinking that. So because they can understand that as an objective thing, they'll put out information that funnels you into a certain type of thought. That's how the media works. That's what they're doing, and that's why it's illusion, because it's an illusion, an illusion. It's alluding to the truth, but it's not stating the truth, and you hear it. And because we trust the media and we don't really psychologically decode things, we hear an allusion to the truth, and we just accept the illusion because we don't really know how to make the connection, because no one's out here speaking about how everything connects through God and how God is the only justification for any knowledge. There's no one out here saying that, and there's no one out here who's very articulate about including science into understanding God. So, or they're too articulate and people just can't pay attention to them because it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So yeah, it's a very tricky thing, and then once people go into long-winded things, it's like, how is this not illusion? But it's just really not relying on the source to give you information. It's just finding a mirror in a source that you can relate to, so you don't feel as alone. Okay. Yeah, so watch out for godless models of the universe, because they just don't explain anything. They're just like, yeah, everything just exists and do this. And it's like, okay. That generally includes nihilists, atheists, Buddhists, and pragmatists. This also includes Satanists, humanists, and generally most modern religious practitioners, because dualism is essential to most modern religion, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. There's dualism packed right in there, and then Christianity is interesting because it'll go from monotheism to tripartism to dualism. So Christianity it's got the whole kit and caboodle, and so does Hinduism. But yeah, godless models generally come from nihilists, atheists. Buddhists will even claim that there's no God. Yeah, pragmatists will be like, I don't care if there's a God, I'm just trying to get work done, Yeah, anyways. We reject the factual basis of claims from these groups, because they immediately shoot themselves in the foot. They make their statement, and it's immediately like, yeah, but you're not paying attention to how the processes behind our physical existence. And once you pay attention to those processes, it's just like, oh, well, obviously let me explain. So nihilists, atheists, and Buddhists will postulate that there is not an intentional driving force in the universe, and that all occurrence is random or without inherent value. As the words leave their mouths, they are unaware of the processes of being human, as humans corroborate value schemes in order to work in unison. So, if everybody's trying to build a building, the nail guy, has a certain vision of how it should get done, and the roofing guy has a certain vision of how it should get done, and all of those separate workers have to corroborate their vision of how to get things done through the foreman through the main person there that is directing everybody. So that is the main channel. That's how you can think of this relationship to the God aspect, where everybody has to go through the main director to be able to actively implement their vision, by communicating it with the person that's in charge. To work in unison. This coming to a point, or the same conclusion, implies that there are multiple possible conclusions to a given situation, and that unless communicated and accepted, human values are often at ends with each other. So the guy who's going to pound in the nails benefits from doing it in a certain way because he can just go to town and pound all the nails in, and so he prefers to do it in a way that makes his job easier, and that's the utility bias. And it's just a function of that person being a person. So it's not really negative for that person to be operating in that way. It's just negative that we don't acknowledge that that's how bias works, and that a person will be biased towards what benefits them just because, like, that's just a basic thing you can just assume because it's always true, because that's how individuals interact with the world. You go towards what benefits you. It wouldn't make sense for the guy who's his only job is to pound in nails, but he's going to try and have the house be built in a way that benefits the cement guys. Like, why would he be thinking about like, he's not even in a job where you would necessarily know something about cement laying. So for him to think about that would require a wider range of knowledge, and would probably imply that he would more likely be the boss instead of just being the nail guy. And so there's lots of it's really easy to say that there's no value or purpose or no patterns until you go out in the world and you see how things work, because everything works inherently off of patterns. Like, everything just works that way. So it's like, to deny that there's an intentional driving force, but that there are patterns and that you have to follow certain modes of behavior to experience positive outcomes. Like, because of that, we can understand that there are certain methods and modes which are most beneficiary for us to participate in. Let me just read this. I'm kind of butchering it. This coming to a point or the same conclusion implies that there are multiple possible conclusions to any given situation, and that unless communicated and accepted, human values are often at ends with each other. All of which points at the inherent value of certain methods and modes of being, which there being certain methods and modes of being that are more valuable than others points to the fact of physically detectable benefits when operating within these modes and methods. And because there's the detectable physical benefits by by participating in the world in a certain way, your body, because of the way that the world interacts with you, because of how you're interacting with it, your body becomes supercharged and energized, because you're not resisting anything that's happening, and you're simply facilitating what's going on. So in that way, we find that there's actually physical proof that there is a right way to do things, and that there's a right way of how to do something. Like, to lift a box, you really should bend your knees and like get under it, and that is the right way to lift a box, and it's just objectively the right way, because if you lift the box like that, your whole body actually gains benefit. It's basically just doing a squat and lifting up a box. But if you bend your back and just muscle up a box, it's so bad for your body that it's, again, not acknowledging that there's a correct way to do everything, and that most people are like, oh, you're trying to tell me how to do shit. And it's like, I don't care how you do stuff. I'm telling you there's a right way and there's a wrong way. I don't give a shit what you do. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. and it's for you to discover. And I'm not going to tell you what the right way is, because fuck me, but there is a right way. And that's it's illusion to think that there's not a right way to do something, because there's physically detectable benefits from lifting a box the correct way. So we know that there are correct ways to do things, and because of that, that tilts towards there being a purpose and an underlying force that just exists, that benefits a specific mode of action over a different one. So because we can't just lift a box in whatever way, we can imply, or we can understand, that there are certain physical properties in place that make it so that if we align ourselves with self-expression and self-maintenance, we align with the intent of what we're trying to do, and it's no longer a pain to move the box. It's actually part of our physical development, and like if you're just engaging with the box like, oh, fucking stupid box, let me just pick it up and throw it over here, it's like you can destroy your body by not following the proper procedures. And that's that's the negative aspect of living in illusion. Living in illusion, you don't really have to think about anything, but you will suffer so many negative physical ailments because you're not expressing yourself, and ailments are the residue of lack of expressed emotion. So, and you can corroborate all this if you want. You can just believe me, or you can say that I'm just a bullshitter. But this is just for people to hear. You don't have to agree with everything. I'm just saying that the illusion that you can just do whatever you want. Nike, just do it. If we actually mean you can do whatever you want and just do it, we have a really why do we hold anyone accountable for anything? It just doesn't make sense to me. So it's just like Nike is a perfect example of illusion, because it's like, yeah, just do it, but also if you do something that other people don't agree with, you will be thrown in jail, or you will be killed, or you will, and then it's just like, so don't just do it, or don't just do whatever you want. It's just like, again, it's alluding to the fact that you can't just do whatever you want, but they're trying to encourage you to just do whatever you want, so that you can be fed into the system, and you can either go into jail, or you can and yeah, so it's pretty nefarious. But and for nihilists, Buddhists, and atheists, the final is it's as if, because there's no visible superhumanoid being creating things like we do, there's no giant mega, the Jolly Green Giant isn't outside, building a house. We're just like, oh, there's no God because that doesn't exist, because the Jolly Green Giant isn't outside my house right now building a house. And it's just like, right, we're not necessarily saying that God is a person. We're actually saying that God is an inward force that manifests us. So God is not out there, he's inside of you, and it's for you to discover what that means. But that's what I'm saying. And their illusion is, yeah, we can just tell you what to do, and don't worry about why you're here, just do it, and just listen to me, and if you don't, we'll throw you in jail. And that's definitely a justification. Like, that definitely proves what I'm saying true, and isn't just me muscling over on you. Again, just absolute, like, not even willing to engage with thought, just like, no, but I'm right. It's like, no, but maybe you're wrong. Anyway, so, and then Satanists, humanists, and most religious types have been indoctrinated into the cult of subservience, as these trains of thought are based in dualism. The problem of dualism is that the proponent of it is actively putting themselves into the subservient role, reliant on their master, or that person is lying to others in hopes that weak individuals will raise them up to be the new master. There again is no acknowledgement of the psychological dynamics that are embedded within the different styles of thought. So, like, if dualism exists, that master-slave dynamic also exists, because that's what the master-slave dynamic is. The master-slave dynamic is dualism. So if there's dualism within any thought pattern, or if the basis of your religion is dualism, it's just like, right, that's what disqualifies it. It's not that something in the canon of your religion is necessarily false. I said I'm Christian. It's that when you see dualism, it's false because it's dualism, and that should just click in your mind that never is dualism right. It's just never right, and they fool you into thinking that there is good and evil, and that we're these ultimate people that can just tell exactly what good and evil is, and that we know all intentions of all people throughout the world, and that we individually have a perfect understanding of everything around us. They try to fool you into that by participating in dualism, and I'm saying you should aspire to have an understanding of everything around you, but that understanding should not come from someone outside of you, because you can assume that they will benefit from what they're telling you. Now what I'm telling you, I would benefit if people practice this, but it's not like, yeah, I make money because you're doing what I tells you. It's, I would benefit because everybody would benefit, and that includes me. So that's why I choose to say these things. If you can prove me wrong, go ahead, but I'm not even really saying anything that's fact-based. I'm not saying anything that's my opinion. That's what's really cool about this, because once you find truth, it's just like you can't disprove any of it. It's like that's what's at the base of it. It's just like, yeah, go ahead and try and disprove it, and I can disprove what you're disproving me with. So it's just it's not to be like, look at me. It's to be like, the infallibility of this truth process is why it's important, and why I think it's worth talking about. And again, with dualism, there's a fundamental lack of awareness of the maliciousness of others, and a lack of self-generated thought. So they're ready to prescribe to something because they don't know shit about shit, and they're just ready to do something because you told them to. So, and then finally, pragmatists, or people with no desire for mental speculation, kind of what I ended there with the dualism, but or doers, pragmatists or doers, it can be seen as the most innocent in this game of illusion, because they aren't necessarily breathing somebody else's doctrine. They're not like, but Buddha came here on this date and he said these words. It's like, no, they're just like, let me just get some shit done so I can have some food and water. They're just trying to basically live. So they're just trying to get by. So that's commendable. But there's a basic rejection of abstract thought, which is not necessarily negative, but it points towards a potential lack of auto-generated mental content. So abstraction is just kind of the process through which we think. Like, we'll just, we'll see one thing, and that'll spark a thought, which sparks a thought, which sparks a thought, until you're thinking about this huge drawn-out concept based on the one thing that you saw. Those people won't do that, and they'll kind of negate that process of abstraction by constantly being busy. It points towards the fact that they don't want to engage in that mental process because they feel that it separates them from their body or some other block. Generally we can assume that a pragmatist is a person that will work for someone else just to not challenge their rejection of their mental capabilities, and you don't necessarily have to assume, if somebody's a pragmatist, that they are limited, but you can kind of, understand, because of how they live their life, they're not really invested in making sure that they're factually correct. They're just invested in getting something done. So based on that, you can assume that at some point they're going to not have all the facts straight because they just don't give a shit about what the facts are. So what does it practically mean to live in truth? To live in truth means high confidence / self-assuredness, humbleness, default to proper engagement. You're not going to cuss somebody out because they're wearing a shirt you don't like fuck off, idiot. Why the fuck would you ever do that? You know, like just basic, like, yeah, never be a turd ever, you know, because, you know, no one should tolerate you being an asshole, and you deserve to have someone be an asshole back to you if you're an asshole. That's the way that the world works, and like we should like exist on that level where you deserve bad things happening to you if you do bad things, you know, like in if we you know actively put that out there and you know think it and think it and think it, these people that are actively doing bad things are going to have bad things happen to them, you know. So you know, and I think that there's a resistance to do that because they're like, well, these rich people, these people that are like fucking over the entire world, they're like important, they're in charge. And it's just like, no, you know, if somebody's being a douchebag, you know, what do they deserve? They deserve infinite reward or immediate, you know, reciprocity of equal douchebag back. You know, it's just, you know, if you believe in science, equal and opposite forces. So you're encouraging, you know, negative engagement by not defaulting to proper engagement. So, you know, once you understand truth, you just default to proper engagement because I don't want to deal with you and your emotional baggage. Sorry. Self-expression is another example of what it means to live in truth. Veneration of all life, you know, respecting animals, eating, you know, mostly vegetarian diet. You know, if you have to eat meat, you know, you got to live, but you know, really like praying over your food and just living intentionally. Simple living, holistic worldview. These are all of these are simply results from living in truth. So you don't have to try and live like this. You will just live like this if you align yourself with truth. That's the way that truth works. It just eliminates all of the false ways of being, and you just happen to live like this. And it's not that I'm telling you things that you have to do. You just will do them if you align yourself with truth. And that's where it gets into, you know, like the East kind of is like really good, but like as far as philosophy goes, but they trick you, you know, because they don't let you think that you're capable. You know, they're just like, they tell you all the information and then they're like, but you can't do it and you have to go through a priest. And it's like, so, yeah, and that's just at the fundamental base of it. Eastern philosophy, even Confucianism and, you know, Taoism and all that. So, yeah. Those who stand in truth dispel all illusion simply by doing so. Truth, then, is the end result of an internal process of apophatically negating assumptions that are pre-made and installed into us by the various nefarious forces. And illusion is the result of accepting everything in life unquestioningly. So, you know, when they say people are swimming in a sea of illusion, it just means people don't really have any idea what's going on. They're not trying to check with themselves to make sure they understand or feel comfortable. They're just living outwardly and just doing what they're told so that they can get their bread and soup, and they can just go hide in their hole until they have to do it again, you know. And to me, that's an undesirable way to live, you know. You know, if we're going to pretend that we're free people, if we're going to pretend that this is a worthwhile society, you know, then you should be able to, you know, question all things. You know, it's not that you should act unscrupulously. You know, you shouldn't be a punk or a vagabond or just someone who's causing havoc. But you know, we can't pretend that we live in a free and fair society if at the base of it no one's willing to even hear me speak, you know. And it's not, you know, it's not me, fuck me, it could be anybody who's saying these things. But like, you know, if I'm not allowed to speak because, you know, I'm just not allowed to, you know. I would love to speak. I'd love to speak at you know, colleges and shit. because I think that there's institutional forces that are causing the illusion to exist, and they're propagating, the illusion, and they benefit from the illusion. That's just a part of that utility bias. So they benefit from everybody not knowing what the fuck's going on. So they're not trying to help anybody. They're not trying to clear anything up. They're just trying to perpetuate it until they get what they want. And then, and that's that. So, yeah, that's the end of this video. Oh, I guess to start your apophatic journey, I would just quote Patrick McGoohan from The Prisoner, 1976 or 1967. You can look it up on YouTube. The Prisoner, Patrick McGoohan. He types into the computer to destroy this computer that's controlling everything in this village. You watch the show if you want like an actual description. He destroys this, central computer by simply typing in the word "why." And just begin to ask that. Not because I'm telling you to, but why? Why should I listen to you? Fuck off. And then, do what you will. But, yeah. I hope you guys have a good one. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.